Do you want a kiss?
No, I really went for it, didn't I?
Yeah.
The story of Tessa and Scott is about how two people can spend 22 years on the ice together and have the entire watching world convinced they were in love. Was it real? By February 2018, the two Canadians own 5 Olympic medals, more than any figure skaters in history, 3 Olympic golds, every major title their sport offers, the only ice dance super slam ever recorded. And one question, asked by every audience that ever watched them, were Tessa and Scott really a couple? This is the story of Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir. The story begins in 1997 in Ilderton, Ontario, at a small skating club outside London. Carol Moir was coaching both children individually, her 7-year-old student Tessa Jane Virtue and her 9-year-old nephew Scott Patrick Moir. Tessa was the youngest of 4 children. Scott was the youngest of 3 brothers in a Moir family that had lived inside the sport for 2 generations. Provincial victory came in Woodstock in January 1999. No one predicted what they would achieve together. The pair moved to Canton, Michigan in 2004 to train under Igor Shpilband and Marina Zueva. By March 2006, in Ljubljana, they were World Junior Champions, the first Canadian ice dance team ever to win that title. Senior debut 6 months later, World Silver in 2008, World Bronze in 2009, and then came Vancouver, February 19, 2010. The compulsory dance, a tango romantica, placed them second by a hair, February 20th. The original dance, a flamenco set to music from Don Quixote, moved them into first by less than a point, February 22nd, 2010. The free dance, the Adagietto from Mahler's Fifth Symphony, white and silver costumes, a program of long lines, classical lifts, and a held final note. 4 perfect 10.0 component scores, a score of 110.42 in the free dance, a combined total of 221.57. 3 days before Tessa's 21st birthday, the team won the first Olympic ice dance gold medal in Canadian history. The pair became the youngest ice dance Olympic champions ever. The duo became the first North Americans to win the event, ending a 34-year European stranglehold on the sport. A month later, in Torino, the world title followed. People who watched them skate began to argue about what they were watching. There was a held breath at the end of every program. There was a way they reached for each other in the silence between movements. The duo themselves have always called each other best friends. The audiences who fell in love with them were never quite sure they believed it. Then came the injury. Tessa had been hiding chronic exertional compartment syndrome since before the Games, a condition that had been splitting her shins open from the inside. Surgeries in October 2008 and again in October 2010. The team withdrew from most of the 2010 to 2011 season. The dynasty had barely started, and it was nearly over before it began. Tessa and Scott took silver at the 2011 Worlds in Moscow, then a second world title at the 2012 Worlds in Nice. By 2014, the pair arrived at Sochi as the defending Olympic champions. Sochi was the hardest Olympics of their career. The longtime American training partners across the rink, Merrill Davis and Charlie White, had been gaining on them all season, and both teams shared the same coach. Marina Zueva had built every program of Tessa and Scott's senior career, beginning at Canton. At the opening ceremony of the Games, Marina marched not with the Canadians but with the American team. In the inaugural Olympic team event, Tessa and Scott won silver. 5 days later, in the individual ice dance, they took silver again, beaten in the free dance, beaten on combined score, beaten by 4 points by the 2 skaters they had trained beside every day for half a decade. The Olympic gold from Vancouver was gone. Davis and White were the new champions. Afterward, the pair stepped away from the sport. They had given it 18 years already. Everything there was to win, they had already won once. The case for staying was no longer obvious. For nearly 2 years, neither one said whether they would ever come back. In February 2016, on a CBC broadcast, Tessa and Scott announced they were returning. They had also left Marina Zueva. The pair had moved to Montreal to a coaching team led by Marie-France Dubreuil, her husband Patrice Lauzon, and Romain Hagenauer at the Ice Academy of Montreal. The choreographer who had built the first half of their senior career would not be the choreographer who built the last one. It was the most consequential decision of their professional lives. They left the coach who had known them since they were teenagers. They moved to a city where they barely knew anyone. They rebuilt their entire technique from the ground up alongside the next generation of ice dancers. They had 2 years until PyeongChang. What followed was the most dominant season modern ice dance had ever seen. Tessa and Scott took gold at the Grand Prix final in Marseille with a world record total. The Canadian Championships came next, then 4 continents in Gangneung, on the rink where the Olympics would be held a year later. By April in Helsinki, the pair held a 3rd World Championship title. Across the entire season, no other ice dance team beat them. PyeongChang opened on February 11, 2018, with the figure skating team event. Tessa and Scott skated a Latin short dance, then delivered a Moulin Rouge free dance the following night that set the standard for the rest of the games. Canada won team event gold. A week later came the individual ice dance. On February 19th, the pair set a world record in the short dance. On the night of February 20th, the entire weight of their 21-year partnership came down to 4 minutes of music. The program was Marie-France Dubreuil's restructured Moulin Rouge, a 4-minute love story performed by 2 people who had been skating together for 21 years. Their score was 122.40. The French team, Gabriela Papadakis and Guillaume Cizeron, beat them in the free dance with a record 123.35. But the lead Tessa and Scott had built 2 days earlier in the short dance was enough. The combined 206.07 was a world record. The gold was theirs. It was the 5th Olympic medal of their career. 3rd gold, 2 silver. With it, the 2 Canadians passed every figure skater who had ever stood on an Olympic podium. Tessa and Scott were now, by record, the most decorated figure skaters in Olympic history. The Super Slam belonged to them. No other ice dance team in the history of the sport has come close to matching it. What the 2 of them built in PyeongChang, they built together, as whatever they have always been to each other. In the fall of 2018, the pair launched the Thank You Canada Tour, a love letter to the country that had watched them since they were children. On September 17, 2019, in a video they made themselves, they announced their retirement. Skate Canada's release that day put the number at 55 international medals across 20 competitive years, of which 33 were gold. They built different lives in different cities after. Tessa moved to Toronto. She earned an MBA at Queen's, then a Master of Applied Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania in 2023. She joined Deloitte as an executive advisor. Mattel made a Tessa Virtue Barbie in 2019. In the summer of 2023, she married Morgan Reilly, a defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their son, McCormick, was born in August 2024. Scott went home. He moved back to Ilderton with Jacqueline Mascarin, Jackie, a physician's assistant who had been, by a small joke of geography, his first ice dance partner as a child, before Carol paired him with Tessa. In February 2021, Scott opened the London, Ontario campus of the Ice Academy of Montreal as its head coach. 2 months later, Jackie gave birth to their daughter. The 2 of them married on June 24, 2022. A son followed in 2024. The honors came in waves. The Order of Canada arrived in November 2020, the country's highest civilian appointment, given to them for athletic excellence and for the generation of young skaters they had inspired. Canada's Sports Hall of Fame followed 3 years later. The Skate Canada Hall of Fame opened its doors to them in February 2025. By that final ceremony, the pair had been retired longer than most ice dance teams compete in an entire career. It is 29 years since 2 children were paired on a small-town rink in Ilderton, Ontario, and asked to skate together. They became the most decorated figure skaters in Olympic history. They won every title their sport offered. They redefined what ice dance could look like, and they did it together, from the same town, with the same partnership, for 22 years. What they built was something the sport will not see again in this generation. Audiences who could not name a single ice dance term still understood the way Tessa looked at Scott in the closing seconds of a program. Children who took up skating after Vancouver did so because of 2 Canadians whose chemistry had no language to explain it. Coaches studied them for clues. Skating writers ran out of metaphors. The world ran out of ways to ask whether what it was watching was real. Tessa and Scott answered the only way they had ever known how, by getting back on the ice, year after year, and letting the audience decide for itself. Medals tell part of the story, their partnership tells the rest. What Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir built across 22 years is what becomes possible when 2 people decide very young to spend their lives skating toward each other, and never quite stop, even after the music ends. I'm glad you watched the video all the way through. If you'd like more, subscribing and leaving a like is what makes it possible to keep making them. Every video on this channel is built for the same reason, to bring great athletic stories to people who would love them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.